First and foremost, I should note that it is the view of the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission that the state should approach reforms on access to abortion in Ireland primarily as a matter of healthcare policy, and that to do so would be in keeping with its obligations under international human rights law. As the committee is well aware, the Protection of Life During Pregnancy Act 2013 allows for terminations of pregnancy where there is a real and substantial risk to the life of the mother. This limited access does not meet the requirements of international human rights law. Concerns about the barriers placed by the existing legal framework on women's right to the highest attainable standard of health, on the right to privacy, to equality before the law, to non-discrimination, and to freedom from inhuman and degrading treatment, as well as the state's special obligations towards minors, in particular the girl child, have been raised by several international human rights bodies. The position taken by the UN Human Rights Treaty bodies, again as the committee will be aware, differs from the position taken by the European Court of Human Rights. In the case of ABC versus Ireland, the court concluded that abortion law in Ireland struck a fair balance between the competing interests that were presented. And the court relied in particular on the right to travel abroad for abortion as being significant in applying the fair balance test and in assessing the proportionality of the interference with women's right to private life. As the committee knows, a wide margin of appreciation was applied by the court, but it was not unlimited. Ultimately, the court concluded that the constitutional prohibition on abortion in situations where a woman's health or well-being were at risk pursued the legitimate aim of the protection of morals and reflected the profound moral values of the Irish people. The court did not accept at that time that sufficient evidence had been presented of a change in those values since the adoption of the Eighth Amendment. I'm happy to expand on this judgment in our discussion and on subsequent case law from the court. To turn then to UN human rights bodies, the UN Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights has made clear that realisation of a woman's right to health requires the removal of all barriers interfering with access to health services, including in the area of sexual and reproductive health. And it has identified criminalisation of abortion and restrictive abortion laws as among these barriers. The committee has also specifically expressed its concern on the discriminatory impact on women who cannot afford to travel abroad to access abortion services or access to the necessary information. These concerns have been reiterated by the UN Human Rights Committee, and as was noted in the concurring opinion of Professor Cleveland in the Mellett decision, she stated that the committee's finding of a violation of Article 26 of the Covenant on equality before the law and equal protection of the law, she said that this finding was fully justified on grounds of discrimination arising from gender stereotyping. The Commission is of the view that the key areas that require attention by this committee include the development of a legislative and regulatory framework that provides for access to abortion for reasons of risk to life and health, socioeconomic or family circumstances, pregnancy as a result of rape or incest, and fatal fetal abnormality. The Commission has also in the past raised concerns about the number of examinations that a girl or woman may be subjected to where she seeks treatment under the current legislation, and the effect that this may have on a woman's right to respect for her private and family life. The Commission has also raised concerns about the barriers that assessment and certification requirements place on women with restricted access to medical practitioners or health information, such as women from poor socioeconomic backgrounds, women from minority ethnic groups, or women with intellectual disabilities. A reformed framework for access to abortion services under a wider set of circumstances should, in our view, avoid the creation of new processes whereby women and girls may be subject to further trauma, re-victimisation, delays in treatment, or other harms. The Commission is of the view that a new framework for access to abortion in Ireland should place the decision-making process primarily in the hands of the pregnant woman in consultation with her physician. And the Commission stresses the importance of ensuring that constitutional reform avoids replicating the barriers to human rights and equality that are currently in place. Given these considerations, the Commission recommends that the referendum announced should allow for the development of a framework governing access to abortion that has a basis in primary legislation and regulation. Before I finish, I would just like to briefly touch on a number of other themes that arise in our policy paper and which are useful to highlight to the committee here today. As has been highlighted at the Citizens' Assembly and in other fora, the criminalisation of abortion constitutes a potentially serious chilling factor for women seeking medical care and for healthcare staff providing such care. The Commission therefore is of the view that, notwithstanding limitations that may be placed on access to abortion by legislation and regulation, the state should decriminalise abortion in all circumstances, as was required by the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child in its concluding observations on Ireland adopted in 2016. Finally, the Commission and others have highlighted serious shortcomings in Ireland's sexual and reproductive health education system. In parallel to a reformed legislative and regulatory framework for access to abortion in Ireland, it is crucial that the state develop a comprehensive, scientifically objective sexual and reproductive health education policy. I thank the committee for their attention, and we would welcome further questions and discussion.